Hi, a very good morning to you and welcome to the show. This is R.N. Bhaskar from BKBB, which is an acronym for Bhaskar Ki Business Baatein. This is a channel that comes to you with policy analysis, conversations, and even business stories. But right now at 8:15 in the morning, we come to you with news behind the news. We pick up a few headlines that we think are important and analyze them for you. And today I have my co-anchors, the Saloni. Welcome, Saloni. Husaina. Welcome, Husaina. Janavi. Welcome, Janavi. And Sanjay. Welcome, Sanjay. And together, all the four of them are going to be discussing the following titles. The first title is about how the EU attempts a rescue for India shrimp trade. And the second one is how tensions are rising on the United States proposed Hire Act. And the third one is again job related, how India's educated youth face irrelevance in the job market. And the fourth one is how government myopia has actually invoked WTO regulations against subsidies for farm produce. And let us begin these stories first. First of all, could I request Saloni to talk about the shrimp trade?
Yes, sir. So the European Union has approved 102 additional Indian buried establishments, potentially increase shipments by 20%. This decision coincides with the Free Trade Agreement negotiations. Free Trade Agreement's acronym is FTA. It provides a significant boost to the country's seafood sector, increasing the total number of approved establishments to 604. The development comes at a crucial time as seafood exports to the EU stood at $1.1 billion in financial year 2024. So this announcement coincides with the ongoing 13th round of FTA negotiations between India and the European Union. It reflects overall optimism between India and the EU and is an important confidence building measure. The officials have called this a big boost for Indian exports. This also said that numerous meetings have been held to resolve non tariff barriers between the two regions. This move offers relief to India's shrimp sector, which is one of the hardest hit by the US tariff. It is important to note that the European Union remains second largest seafood export market after the United States. With all major seafood establishments now listed for EU exports, Indian exporters can better meet European demand across multiple marine product categories. Industry experts have described the listing as a landmark step for India's seafood trade. The additional of 102 establishments is amongst the largest single expansions of European Union approved facilities, potentially transforming the scale and scope of bilateral seafood commerce. What do you think, sir?
I think it's a brilliant move. Thanks, Saloni, for alerting me. And yes, the shrimp trade was badly hit, and the EU wants to sweeten the pill for the government of India, even while FTA negotiations have begun. There were two interesting developments in the FTA negotiations. First, instead of India running behind the EU and going overseas, the EU delegation is coming to India. And they're coming with a large delegation of industry to see ways in which India and the EU can work together. This is a big breather for India, especially in the face of US laws and US tariffs. Good for Indian shrimp farmers, but the future answer will have to lie in India seeking newer markets and not the old markets anymore. Worldwide, the best markets are in the neighborhood. India is going all the way to the EU to sell to them. Good for India, but look at your neighborhood also. That is where gold is ready to be picked up. Will India understand? I don't know. But thanks. Saloni, thanks a lot. And we take the next story which is again about the USA and the tensions. Hussaina, could you walk us through the Hire Act?
Yes, sir. US has proposed legislation which has sent ripples across the global IT landscape, especially in India. So, the Halting International Relocation of Employment Act, or the Hire Act, seeks to impose a 25% tax on companies that outsource jobs to foreign workers instead of hiring Americans. Now, if this law is passed, it would take effect from January 1, 2026, and could have massive consequences, especially for Indian IT firms and global capability centers, or GCCs, which serve as a key delivery arms for multinational corporations. Now, this bill is positioned as a move to protect American jobs and fund domestic workforce development. It coincides with Trump's "Make America Great Again" policy. But industry experts argue that it's more complicated than it sounds, because for US companies, this could mean that a 60% increase in tax burden when outsourcing due to the combined effect of excise, state, and local taxes. And crucially, companies won't be allowed to deduct these outsourcing payments as business expenses. That's a double whammy, so. So for India, this impact could be severe. The outsourcing ecosystem, or especially GCCs in sectors like banking, retail, and tech support, may no longer offer the cost advantages that made them attractive in the first place. Industry experts has also warned that the cost savings for US firms, which currently range from 25 to 50%, could shrink to as little as 15 to 20%, which in turn could severely disrupt India's IT driven growth. They've also believed that lobbying from US businesses may push back against the bill, given the critical dependence of American firms on skilled offshore talent that is not readily available at scale in the US. In short, while the Hire Act aims to bolster domestic employment, it risks destabilizing global outsourcing models, driving up operational costs, and again impacting both US companies and as well as India's IT economy. So, what do you think, sir? Do you think that this will serve US?
Well, Hussaina, thank you very much for bringing the story to our notice. Yes, it's an important development. Shows how US is inventing new ways to penalize countries which have created jobs and opportunities for US products. Offshoring is a common thing to reduce costs. And America seems to have forgotten the famous line of Steve Jobs when he was alive. And he said there are certain kinds of job America cannot and will not do. They have to be shipped overseas. And that is why you're right in your estimate, in your surmise. This Hire Act may not may not pass through Congress in its present form. Either the tax rates will be shrunk to about 5%, or the bill itself will be thrown out and it will not get implemented. But yes, it shows the belligerence of America. Thanks. Thanks, Susanna. And we go to the third story, and the third story is equally interesting. And the third story is about how India's educated youth face irrelevance. Chadwick, could you come in?
Yes. So today we have some more interesting data with us. India's higher education system is producing more graduates and postgraduates than ever before. But the uncomfortable truth here is that most of them are not ending up in jobs that match their qualifications. So, fresh data shows us that over half of India's graduates, nearly 50%, are working in semi skilled jobs in roles that don't really require a college degree. And among postgraduates, the picture isn't much brighter. Either 28% of them are also in semi skilled work. What's even more striking is how few people are actually in jobs that fit their education. Because for graduates, only 8.3% of the pass outs land in positions that require high competency, while for postgraduates, the figure is even lesser at 7.7%. Now, postgraduates do have a higher chance of finding specialized jobs, because 63% do manage to do that compared to the 38% of graduates, but that still leaves a large chunk underemployed. So, the bigger question is that if higher education is meant to actually create upward mobility, then why are so many degree holders stuck doing jobs that are below their skill level? A major reason could be the huge gap between what universities teach and between the skills that actually are required in the job market. And degrees may be increasing in number, but the employability is not really keeping pace, as is clear from the numbers. And there are also all these ripple effects, like you have wasted human capital and frustration among young professionals, and also a drag on productivity. So the real debate here is not about creating more jobs, but it's about creating the right jobs and aligning education with the job industry. Because in the end, a degree should be more than just a certificate. It should be a bridge that takes you to more fulfilling opportunities. So, what do you say, sir?
You're right, Janavi. A very, very crucial point that you raised, and that is because India's educated youth are becoming increasingly unemployable. They lack the quality of education that industry expects of them. TCS is on record that barely 30% of India's graduates, India's engineers, are employable. And this is echoed by people at McKinsey and others. You ask foreign law firms, and this only 1% of India's graduates is employable. You have spent money on education without looking at quality, and that is destroying people's lives. They wasted 12 years in education, which means nothing, and the job market looks down upon them. This is not the way to nurture India's demographic dividend. Thanks, Janvi. A very crucial and very saddening point indeed for government's policymakers. And that, in a way, brings me to the end of today's session because Sanjay, who was supposed to come in, there's a technical glitch with his computers, so he will not be coming in. But he was going to talk about how the WTO has started frowning on India's farm produce, subsidies. Remember, when you give a subsidy to an item that is exported, the WTO can call it an unfair trade practice. The government seems to have forgotten that one of the geniuses behind agricultural prosperity was Varghese Kurien, who created the NDDB and created a separate financing scheme for NDDB, which in turn developed the cooperative sector so that at no time could the WTO say that milk was being subsidized by the government. It was a self-financing body which took care of the industry, and that's why milk exports were possible. After this government took charge, it has started giving subsidies even to the milk sector. And that could render India's milk exports vulnerable to WTO strictures. India does not understand how to manage the global environment and how to follow the excellent examples India's geniuses have put forth in the past. Anyway, that brings me to the end of today's session. But before I go to questions and comments that have started coming in, let me give you the usual reminder. Please click the subscribe button if you're not subscribed already. Click the like button. It helps us immensely. And most important, tell your friends about us. It helps us grow faster. And the first comment that has come in, how will Hire Act affect India's job market where unemployment is surging? Yes, unemployment is surging in India. But again, if you look closely, unemployment is the highest in sectors where skills are not available. 70% of India's youth don't have skills. Look at the AI market. Industry will tell you AI can create more jobs, but we lack the required skills to exploit this market. And the government does not enable even schools with internet, with artificial intelligence, with the ability to search out things and come to terms with international education, the Hire Act is going to hurt India because India does not have the skills. These are routine jobs. They will reduce any job that can be replaced by AI. So the unemployment will be there. We can counter that if we have the skills. We may not have the skills. And that takes us to the next question. on the shrimp industry. Uh, why hasn't the shrimp industry looked at markets in the East? Exactly my question. India has to find out new markets. Worldwide, the best exporters look for markets in the neighborhood and not far away. India has still not learned that lesson. And there's a third question, which is uh, about India's ability to cope with the changing times. Yes, India has a problem. India has the problem of not doing enough to counter the world's development in so many technologies. There's a question of the agriculture sector. What can India do to become more aggressive on the agricultural front? Learn ways in which you don't subsidize farmers directly. Make farmers independent and let them learn new mechanisms to create money from within the farms and not from outside from the government. But the government wants votes. And by getting votes, it's destroying the industry. And finally, there is a question about what should India do to reduce irrelevance in the markets. Give students better education. Give students better skills for a changing market. If your education is good, you also learn adaptability. If your education is bad, you have no adaptability. And that, in a way, brings me to the end of today's session. Thank you for being with us. And yes, do tune in tomorrow. I look forward to seeing you once again. And we'll bring you new stories. And in the meantime, have a wonderful day, have a fruitful day, and be full of cheer. Take care.